For over 500 years, every global reserve currency has followed the same structural path. It always begins with dominance. The currency becomes trusted across continents. International trade is priced in it. Central banks accumulate it. Governments borrow in it. Wars are financed through it. The issuing nation gains extraordinary leverage over the global system. Its financial markets deepen. Its debt seems manageable. Its military expands without immediate consequence. And for a while, everything looks stable. But beneath that stability, pressure builds. Debt compounds faster than productivity. Military commitments extend beyond economic capacity. Political confidence fractures. The currency slowly loses purchasing power. And when trust finally weakens, the shift does not happen gradually. It happens suddenly. History has repeated this pattern more than once. And today, the structure looks familiar. A reserve currency is not just money. It is power embedded inside the global financial system. When a currency becomes dominant, countries use it to settle trade, price commodities, issue debt, and store value. Oil is traded in it. International contracts are written in it. Banks hold it as protection. Investors seek safety in it during crises. This creates artificial demand that strengthens the issuing nation far beyond its domestic economy. But reserve status also creates distortion. Because global demand for the currency allows the issuing country to run persistent deficits, it can import more than it exports. It can borrow at lower rates. It can finance military operations without immediate internal collapse. The privilege feels permanent. Yet, the same mechanism that provides strength also builds vulnerability. If confidence ever declines, the demand that supported the system begins to reverse, and once that reversal starts, the adjustment can be violent. The first modern example of a reserve currency cycle was Spain in the 16th century. After the discovery of the Americas, Spain controlled the largest flow of silver the world had ever seen. Massive shipments crossed the Atlantic every year. Spanish coins circulated across Europe and beyond. Merchants trusted Spanish silver because it was widely accepted and backed by imperial power. For a moment, Spain appeared financially unstoppable. But the flood of silver created inflation across Europe. Prices rose rapidly. Spain imported more than it produced because silver made it easy to buy foreign goods. Domestic industry weakened. Manufacturing declined. Instead of building long-term productive capacity, the empire relied on continuous inflows of precious metals. At the same time, military campaigns expanded across multiple fronts. Debt accumulated. Confidence remained high publicly, but structurally, the system was already straining. As military commitments expanded, Spain increasingly relied on borrowing. The empire borrowed from German and Italian bankers, using future silver shipments as collateral. For a time, lenders believed repayment was guaranteed because the silver mines seemed endless. But revenues fluctuated, wars were expensive, and administrative inefficiencies compounded costs. By the late 1500s, Spain declared bankruptcy multiple times. Each default was followed by restructuring and renewed borrowing. The underlying problem was not a temporary shortage of metal. It was structural overextension. Military spending consumed enormous portions of state revenue. Domestic production remained weak. Inflation eroded real purchasing power. Confidence began to shift slowly toward other financial centers. The silver that once symbolized dominance became a source of instability. The empire did not collapse overnight, but the pattern was already in motion. Debt, debasement, dependency. Spain believed its silver made it invincible. It did not. 3 centuries later, Britain believed the same about the pound. At the start of the 20th century, the British Empire controlled nearly a quarter of the world's land and population. The sun never set on its territory. The pound sterling was the center of global trade. Contracts, shipping insurance, sovereign debt, everything flowed through London. Financial power and military power reinforced each other. It looked permanent. Then came World War I. The war forced Britain to borrow heavily from the United States. Gold reserves drained. Industrial capacity weakened. The creditor became the debtor. Publicly, Britain had won the war. Structurally, it had begun to lose financial control. The empire still looked powerful. But the numbers were changing. And numbers eventually overpower narratives. After the war, Britain tried to restore the old order. It returned to the gold standard at the pre-war rate, pretending nothing had changed. But the economy had changed. The pound was overvalued. Exports became expensive. Unemployment rose. Industrial output stagnated. To defend the currency, interest rates stayed high. To defend the empire, military spending continued. To defend prestige, politicians avoided reform. This is the critical stage in every cycle. Leaders try to preserve the illusion of strength, while the underlying system weakens. Confidence slowly erodes. Allies begin hedging. Trade patterns shift. Capital flows migrate. By the time Britain abandoned the gold standard in 1931, the psychological shift had already occurred. The pound was no longer unquestioned, and once doubt enters a reserve system, it does not disappear easily. After World War II, the United States emerged not just as a military superpower, but as the financial anchor of the world. Gold flowed into American vaults. The Bretton Woods system positioned the dollar at the center of global trade. Oil, commodities, international debt, all increasingly priced in dollars. Central banks accumulated dollar reserves because they trusted the stability of the American economy. For decades, the system worked. America produced, exported, innovated. Industrial output was unmatched. Debt levels were manageable. Confidence was strong. But over time, the structure began to shift. Production slowly moved offshore. Deficits became normal. The dollar remained dominant. But the foundation changed. The system was no longer supported primarily by manufacturing strength. It was supported by global demand and financial markets. And that difference matters more than it appears. In 1971, a structural shift occurred. The United States ended the direct convertibility of the dollar into gold. From that point forward, the dollar became a fully fiat currency. Its value was no longer tied to a fixed metal reserve, but to economic output, institutional trust, and global demand. At first, this change increased flexibility. The government could respond to recessions more aggressively. Liquidity expanded. Financial markets deepened. But the long-term effect was subtle. Without a hard constraint, debt accumulation accelerated. Budget deficits became more frequent. Monetary expansion became a normal policy tool rather than an emergency measure. The system did not weaken immediately. It became more adaptive. Yet, adaptability without discipline can gradually reshape the entire structure. Over the past several decades, federal debt has expanded faster than long-term productive growth. Deficits have become structural rather than temporary. Even during economic expansion, borrowing continues. Interest payments now represent one of the largest categories of federal expenditure. This does not immediately destabilize the system because global demand for dollar-denominated assets remains strong. However, the structure has evolved. The United States now imports significantly more than it exports. Manufacturing as a percentage of GDP has declined compared to previous decades. Financial services and asset markets play a larger role in national output. The dollar remains central to trade and reserves, but the composition of economic strength has shifted. In reserve currency cycles, this stage often marks the transition from production-driven dominance to finance-driven dominance. When we compare Spain, Britain, and the United States, the sequence is not identical in detail, but it is similar in structure. Each system begins with productivity and expansion. Each gains global trust. Each currency becomes the backbone of international trade. Then over time, military commitments expand, debt rises, and the economy gradually shifts from production to financial leverage. The transition does not happen in a single year. It unfolds quietly. Trade partners begin diversifying reserves. Alternative payment systems develop. Central banks increase gold holdings. Bilateral agreements bypass the dominant currency in limited cases. None of these changes individually redefine the system, but collectively they signal adaptation. And adaptation is often the early phase of structural transition. History does not move in straight lines. It moves in cycles shaped by incentives, debt, productivity, and trust. Reserve currencies do not disappear suddenly without warning. The signals appear gradually in trade flows, in balance sheets, in capital allocation, and in geopolitical alignment. The question is not whether systems evolve. They always do. The question is how prepared a nation is when global confidence begins to rebalance. Structural transitions reward discipline, production, and long-term stability. They penalize overextension and complacency. Every empire believed its position was unique. Every reserve currency seemed permanent while it dominated. The structure suggests otherwise. The numbers eventually redefine the narrative. If you're interested in long-term structural shifts in global finance, subscribe. This channel focuses on patterns, not headlines. The next decade will likely redefine monetary influence, and understanding the structure matters more than reacting to noise.